Prince's last Diddy recording played in trial.
The ghost of Prince just did what no living witness could. He shattered Diddy's entire defense with a single recording. In a courtroom packed with celebrities, legal elites, and reporters starving for drama, it wasn't a lawyer, a victim, or even a prosecutor who dropped the bomb. It was a voice. Prince's voice. A private message pulled from his secret vault. A voice that echoed through the room and ripped Diddy's carefully controlled image apart. Within seconds, the music mogul was shaking, yelling, and unraveling before the jury's eyes. But what exactly did Prince say? Why was this recording hidden until now? And how did it turn the biggest trial in hip-hop history into a supernatural courtroom meltdown? Let's break down the moment Prince spoke from beyond the grave and exposed everything.
Cassie said he would get physical. That one male guy who did things with Diddy and Cassie said he witnessed him get physical. Don, so again, we talked about how the domestic charges aren't, what he's being, what he's on trial for. But boy, it's stacking up. And I feel that the jury is going to take that into consideration.
The first Diddy party I went to was at Prince's house. So you want to go to Prince's house to the Diddy party where Tyrese is performing and Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher are swinging on swings. That is what's happening on the other side of the wall. And so the one thing that makes this party different than a Jamie Foxx party or any other celebrity party that wrangles a bunch of young women or guys or whatever too, is that Diddy didn't let you bring your security in the party.
It started like every other morning in that courtroom, but if you were paying close attention, something felt off. Reporters packed the gallery, elbowing for front row seats. Diddy strolled in with that signature swagger, tailored navy suit, sunglasses still on, flashing that rehearsed smile to the cameras. His legal team looked polished and precise, whispering strategy like they were prepping for a corporate merger, not a federal trial. But beneath that smooth exterior, something strange was happening. Security was tighter than usual. Not just the standard 2 officers near the defendant's table. Today there were 4, each posted with eyes locked on Diddy. Another 2 flanked the exits. It wasn't paranoia. It was preparation. And the prosecution? They weren't shuffling paper like normal. They were setting up tech, cords, audio devices, small black boxes, things that hadn't been there before. A court insider whispered, they brought something new today. Something big. The buzz in the room was electric. No one knew exactly what was coming, but everyone could feel it. The air was heavy, like the moment before a lightning strike. Then the judge walked in and dropped the first hint. He scanned the courtroom slowly before speaking. Regardless of what evidence is presented today, I expect full composure. Any disruptions will not be tolerated. That line wasn't in his usual script. And everyone knew it. He was preparing them. Preparing for chaos. Because what was about to happen wasn't just evidence. It was an explosion. The prosecution had been playing it cool for 2 days. Calm, methodical, almost predictable. Connecting dots, reviewing testimonies, laying out the groundwork. It was smart. Too smart. Because while Diddy's team was settling into a false sense of security, the prosecution was setting a trap. And on day 3, they sprang it. Midway through what looked like another slow-moving session, the lead prosecutor suddenly paused. She glanced at the judge, then lifted a small black device from her desk. Your Honor, she said, we'd like to present new audio evidence, authenticated by our forensic team. Diddy's lawyers exploded. Objections flew. They hadn't seen this tape, they said. They hadn't been warned. The judge called them to the bench, voices rising as they argued over discovery, disclosures, and courtroom procedure. But the prosecution stood firm. And when the dust settled, the judge ruled. The evidence was properly disclosed. The prosecution may proceed. Then everything changed. The prosecutor turned, faced the courtroom, and calmly delivered the words that blew the trial wide open. What you are about to hear is the final private recording made by Prince Rogers Nelson before his death. Silence. No gasps. No murmurs. Just stunned, motionless silence. A legend was about to speak from beyond the grave. Not in song, not in performance, but as a witness. And Diddy? He wasn't ready. His lead attorney reached for him instinctively, too late. The color had already drained from Diddy's face. He blinked rapidly, lips twitching, eyes wide. You could see the fear crawling up his throat. Before a single word played, he knew. He knew what was coming. And he couldn't stop it. The courtroom's energy shifted. The walls felt tighter. The audience leaned in. Even the judge seemed to brace himself. Then the audio began. And Prince started talking.
Such a big deal back then. is ever since my third album, I wasn't really taking large advances from the recording companies. I was recording the albums myself in my own studio. So the way I looked at it, I owned the work because I paid for it. And I did all the work. I created it, so I felt like it should belong to me. That said, the companies felt otherwise. And they would always hold this contract up and say, well, you signed it. And I say, well, I understand that. It's not like I want to leave. I just want to, talk about this thing and see if we can't make it more fair. Of course, they wouldn't change, because if they changed, they wouldn't really exist. And that's kind of the situation we're in right today. They're not going to exist much longer. But it's not like we're against them or anything like that. The idea is that we find better ways of working with one another. It shouldn't be a situation where they own the album or the work. We're talking about intellectual copyright. If they're going to be indeed a delivery service, then that's fine. But even FedEx doesn't say that they own the thing that they...
Cassie Ventura on the witness stand for a fourth day in the federal criminal trial against hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs. The defense continuing cross-examination this morning, confronting her with dozens of her own messages, many explicit, hoping to convince the jury she was an eager sexual partner who matched Combs's desires. I'm always ready to freak off, one message said.
She was into the freak-offs herself and was like a willing participant and was into all the freaky stuff, and essentially that was the crux of what they were trying to do yesterday.
And do you think they proved that or not?
I mean, there's texts like that from 2009, I'm always ready to freak off. There was some other texts where she was referencing like hitting him up about the FOs, is what they were referring to him. To me, like, yes, this doesn't look good, but at the same time, I think the timeline is crucial here. And these are texts from 2009, man. That was when they were first getting in the relationship. She was young. Obviously, they were in the honeymoon stage, and she was stoked to like, oh my God, I'm with Diddy. I'm living this lavish lifestyle. Of course, she's going to be saying things that she knows will curry favor with him to keep it going.
His voice wasn't what anyone expected. It wasn't the electrifying, high-energy Prince from stage performances. It was low, measured, almost secretive. You could hear every breath, every hesitation, like he was watching his back while recording. I don't know who to trust anymore, Prince said. And just like that, the illusion of control shattered. Because what came next wasn't vague speculation. It wasn't guesswork. It was evidence. Direct, brutal, undeniable. Prince began describing parties, Diddy's parties. The kind whispered about in industry backrooms. He mentioned exact dates, specific homes, locations in Miami and the Hamptons. He listed guests. Some were the same names already mentioned in prior testimony. But Prince didn't just confirm the rumors. He matched them with detail for detail. Upstairs rooms, special setups, isolated VIP sections. It all lined up with what the prosecution had already laid out. Diddy sat frozen. His attorney whispered frantically in his ear, but Diddy didn't respond. He just stared, straight ahead, blank, and Prince kept talking. What happens at these parties isn't just wrong, it's criminal, Prince said. I've seen who's involved. I've seen who gets hurt. A woman in the third row covered her mouth. Another clutched her chest. Journalists stopped typing. Jurors leaned forward. The tension in that room became almost physical. This wasn't just a recording. This was a statement of war. Because Prince didn't just describe what happened, he named people. And the center of it all was Diddy. He told the truth no one else could. And in that moment, the prosecution didn't need another witness. They had Prince. The voice on the tape grew more urgent. This wasn't just Prince recounting memories. This was a man trying to leave behind a warning. A message he clearly believed could cost him everything. I've seen how they operate, Prince said. I've seen them isolate young artists, separate them from their teams, get them alone, and put them in situations they can't say no to. Viewers around the world might call it scandalous. But inside that courtroom, with evidence mounting, it didn't feel like gossip. It felt like a confession, from someone who saw it all. Then came the bombshell. Prince named a specific party, December 2015. He listed attendees. 2 celebrities who had previously denied ever being there. The room, the upstairs layout, the exact setup. Everything matched what prosecutors had described earlier. There was no way to explain it away. You could hear gasps in the courtroom. Prince's tone shifted, quieter now, like someone trying not to be overheard. I tried to talk to him about it, he said, referring to Diddy. Told him this needed to stop. He laughed and told me to mind my business if I wanted to keep working in this industry. The prosecution hit pause right there. Perfect timing. All eyes turned to Diddy. And what they saw wasn't the music mogul anymore. It was a man completely falling apart. His hands were shaking. His jaw was clenched so tight his teeth were grinding. His attorney slid a legal pad in front of him, probably trying to hide his face from the jury. Too late. Everyone saw it. The fear, the rage, the unraveling. And they knew Prince wasn't done.
Just trying to listen. I mean, there's a lot of this stuff that I've heard and seen already. I'm really trying to connect the dots here and think like, damn, what if Prince was what if he caught wind of some, I'll just say allegedly, stuff that Diddy might have been doing that seems to be, like, I ain't talking about consensual things, I'm talking about illegal things or whatever. But I'm just like, would Diddy be that dumb to like not think that Prince, this celebrity, has cameras in his house as well? So I'm just trying to think, like, because if Prince has cameras and he's recording stuff, you know, to get some dirt on Diddy, I don't know. I feel like Diddy, with all his cameras that he allegedly had, or no, they actually found cameras.
That I don't know, right? What I know is that he was really health conscious. He was a vegan. He didn't abuse alcohol. I didn't know of him abusing drugs. He worked out, you know, so, you know, that also really concerned me, because it made me think that, wow, so you mean you do all these things to take care of yourself and you die so young?
For 2 days, Diddy had been the image of composure. When Cassie testified about the alleged physical confrontations, he didn't flinch. When prosecutors presented photos, text messages, even timelines, he barely blinked. But now, he was crumbling. Prince's voice returned, describing yet another private gathering, this time in Beverly Hills. A specific address, a specific date, March 9th, 2016. An address the prosecution had already confirmed through multiple witnesses. And the second those words left the speakers, something inside Diddy snapped. He stood up, abruptly, like something yanked him from his seat. Not slowly, not cautiously, just up, so fast it startled the jury. For security officers moved immediately, surrounding the defense table. Diddy's attorneys panicked. One grabbed his jacket. Another whispered in his ear with a desperation that hadn't been there before. A third physically stepped between him and the jury box. But it was no use, because the next words out of Prince's mouth described exactly what happened inside that house. What he saw, what he heard, what went on in those private rooms. And then, it happened. Diddy exploded. "That's a lie," he shouted, loud enough to rattle the gallery. He wasn't even there. That never happened. A reporter in the front row jumped in her seat. Gasps echoed from every corner of the courtroom. The judge's gavel slammed so hard it echoed. "Mr. Combs, control yourself or I will hold you in contempt." But it was already over. The mask was gone. The calm, polished mogul image was shattered. And the jury had seen everything. Diddy dropped back into his seat, breathing heavy, his shoulders rising and falling. Sweat pooled under his collar. His hands trembled as he reached for a glass of water, and missed. It spilled. His attorney quickly covered it with papers, trying to clean up the mess, both literally and metaphorically. But everyone in that courtroom knew what they just witnessed. The moment Diddy lost it, not because of a witness, not because of a cross-examination, but because Prince, speaking from beyond the grave, had finally hit a nerve that couldn't be hidden. The courtroom was dead silent, except for Prince's voice still playing through the speakers. And what came next? It obliterated whatever scraps of credibility Diddy had left. Because Prince didn't stop at general accusations. He made things specific, painfully specific. He talked about money, exact payouts. "I've seen the payments," he said. $2 million to one person, 1.3 to another. "I've seen the NDAs. I know what they were paid to stay quiet." And just like that, financial records the prosecution had presented earlier suddenly made perfect sense. This wasn't rumor anymore. It was confirmation. From an icon. From an insider. From someone who knew how the industry really worked. Diddy sat hunched over at the defense table, his face drained of color. He wasn't looking at the jury anymore. He wasn't whispering to his lawyers. He looked, cornered. And then Prince dropped the line that sent a chill through the entire courtroom. "If anything happens to me, make sure this gets to the right people." You could hear someone gasp audibly. One woman in the back row actually teared up. Because this wasn't just evidence. It was a dying man's message. A warning. A legacy. The prosecutor didn't speak. Didn't grandstand. She just let the tape play. And Prince kept going. "This isn't just about protecting myself," he said. "It's about protecting everyone who hasn't been able to speak up." When the audio finally stopped, no one moved. The courtroom was frozen, shaken. Not even the judge said a word for several seconds, because everyone knew what they had just witnessed. Prince had just become the prosecution's star witness without ever stepping foot in the courtroom. From the outside, it may have looked like the prosecution got lucky. A recording from a dead music legend. A courtroom meltdown. A powerful man losing control. But behind the scenes, none of this was luck. It was strategy. Ruthless, surgical, and devastating. For the first 2 days, the prosecution appeared almost boring. Methodical. Like they were playing it safe. Now we know better. They were setting the stage. Feeding Diddy's defense team a false sense of confidence. Letting the mogul believe he had the jury under control. Then they dropped the bomb on day 3. Exactly when they knew it would hit the hardest. Insiders later revealed the truth. The prosecution had the Prince recording from the beginning. They spent months verifying it. 3 independent forensic teams combed through the audio to confirm it hadn't been altered. Because they knew the defense would attack it. They expected challenges, claims of manipulation, legal objections. So they made sure their foundation was unshakable. And they did something even more calculated. They studied Diddy. They analyzed how he behaved in previous legal battles. They noticed a pattern. He stayed calm during the first 48 hours. Always. But on day 3, he relaxed. Let his guard down. Assumed control. So that's when they struck. They even rehearsed it. A courthouse employee revealed the prosecution team ran full simulations, when to play the tape, when to pause, how to position themselves. Even their expressions were practiced. And it worked to perfection. Because when Prince's voice echoed through that courtroom, the entire balance of power shifted. Not with a bang. Not with a fight. With a whisper. With a recording made by a man who knew he wouldn't live long enough to testify. And that's exactly what made it so powerful. You can't cross-examine a ghost. As the courtroom tried to recover from what they'd just heard, Diddy's legal team sprang into crisis mode. His lead attorney stood up immediately, voice trembling as he addressed the judge. "Your Honor, we request a 15-minute recess to consult with our client." The judge didn't even blink. "Request denied. We will proceed." That one denial said everything. Diddy's team, these are the lawyers that charge $1,500 an hour, weren't used to hearing no. But today, nothing was going their way. They were cornered, panicked, desperate, while the prosecution sat calm, composed, and silent. And that's when it became obvious. They planned for this. They wanted this reaction. And they got it, on the record. Legal analysts sitting in the gallery whispered the same thing. This is catastrophic for the defense. Because no matter how many objections they filed, no matter how much spin they tried to throw, you can't unsee what just happened. 3 jurors were still staring at Diddy, watching every twitch, every breath, every shake of his hands. Security didn't take any chances after the outburst. 2 new officers were brought in. One stood right behind Diddy's chair, close enough to grab him if needed. And it didn't stop there. The prosecution kept piling on. They showed text messages from witnesses that matched Prince's timeline. They displayed receipts and financial records that backed up every number Prince mentioned. Diddy sat there sweating through his designer suit, declined water, visibly trembling. He looked less like a billionaire mogul and more like a man watching everything fall apart. And just when things couldn't get worse, his team filed an emergency motion to throw out the recording. They called it unreliable, impossible to verify, and claimed it was unfair since the witness was dead. But legal experts weren't fooled. They knew what that motion really was. A Hail Mary, a last-ditch effort from a team that had just watched their entire defense collapse in real time. One veteran analyst didn't hold back. This will be the moment people point to when they talk about how Diddy lost the case. And they're right, because it wasn't Cassie's testimony that broke him. It wasn't the photos. It wasn't the texts. It was Prince. A voice no one could silence. A voice the industry ignored while he was alive. That now echoes louder than ever from beyond the grave. As the court adjourned, you could feel it. Something had changed. Not just in the trial, but in the music industry. Prince had exposed something ugly. Something deep. Something no one wanted to say out loud. And now the question on everyone's mind isn't just, what happens to Diddy? It's, who else did Prince name? What else is buried in that vault? Because if that was just one tape, what other secrets are still waiting to be heard? If this recording shook you, just wait. Because insiders are already whispering that more tapes exist, and if what we heard today was just the beginning, the rest could blow the lid off the entire industry. So if you want to know who else Prince might have exposed, What other names were mentioned behind closed doors? And just how deep this scandal really goes? Subscribe now. Hit the bell, because when the next revelation drops, you'll want to hear it first.